Sometimes the most incredible stories are hiding in plain sight, not in some huge monument or a famous speech, but in something like this, a simple, typewritten report from 1947. Today, we're going to unlock the story of a nation at a crossroads, and it's all right here, inside the pages of this one document.
So, let's set the scene. Our story starts here, Corner Brook, Newfoundland. It's just 2 years after the end of World War II. And this thing we're looking at, it isn't just a piece of paper, it's an artifact. You can almost feel that crisp autumn air, right? And hear the voices of the men who gathered to create it. This report, it's literally a window into their world.
And that brings us to the big question, the one we're really trying to answer here. These veterans, they had just come back from one world-altering conflict, only to find their home facing this massive, uncertain future. So what can their meeting, their worries, their actual words, tell us about a nation that was basically holding its breath?
All right, so let's crack open this time capsule, shall we? We're going to peel back the cover and take a look at who these people were and what brought them all together on that one day in September.
The conference was put on by the Great War Veterans Association of Newfoundland. Now, don't let the name fool you. Yeah, it was started by veterans from the First World War, but by 1947, this group was representing guys from 2 huge global conflicts. It was like a bridge between 2 generations of soldiers.
And get this, the meeting doesn't start with business. It starts with this ritual. You can just feel the weight in these words. This was not some procedural get-together. It was a solemn assembly of men who were bound together by what they'd seen and who they'd lost. The memory of their fallen friends was the very first thing on the agenda.
Okay, so to really get what they're talking about, you have to understand the totally unique spot Newfoundland was in. The whole world was rebuilding after the war, sure, but Newfoundland was facing something else entirely.
So check out this timeline. It really paints a picture. Back in 1934, Newfoundland was facing economic collapse, so it actually gave up its independence and was run by a British-appointed commission of government. Then the war happened, and when it ended, veterans came back to a home that wasn't a self-governing nation anymore. So by 1947, the debate was raging. Should they get their independence back, or should they join Canada? This is the incredibly tense backdrop for our whole report.
So with all that political stuff swirling around, these veterans weren't just debating hypotheticals. No way. They were fighting for survival, for basic fairness, and for a decent life back home. And this report, it's just filled with the nitty-gritty details of these very real, very personal battles.
One of the first big fights you see in the report was all about education. A lot of vets wanted to go to university or trade school, but they hit a huge wall. They just couldn't afford to live while they were studying.
And we're not talking about a handful of complaints here. The report says a group of 250 veterans actually organized and made their case directly. They argued that the allowance from the government was, and I'm quoting them, totally inadequate. It just wasn't enough to get by on.
And this is what's so brilliant. It shows you how effective they were. They didn't just complain, they took action. The association formed a committee, they wrote up a formal brief, and they met with the government. And the result? A real win. The report proudly talks about a substantial increase to the grant for student veterans. But it didn't stop there. They were fighting on all kinds of fronts, pushing for proper housing for the widows of their fallen friends, demanding benefits for guys who finished school but couldn't find work, and even getting into really complex money issues that were costing servicemen their pay.
But, and this is a big but, not every battle was won. This slide shows a really stark contrast. The association, they successfully argued that men who had paid their own way to the UK to enlist deserved full benefits. Makes sense. But when they made the exact same argument for Newfoundland women who had done the same thing, the government's answer was a hard no. The report just says the recommendation could not be granted. It's a really powerful reminder of the inequalities of the time.
Beyond all these specific fights, the report also captures this really profound moment of change. The whole identity of the veterans community was shifting as one generation started to pass the torch to the next. And this is captured so beautifully in a line from the president's address. He describes this ceremony where the World War I vets formally handed over the responsibility for Commemoration Day to the younger World War II vets. Wow, it was this hugely symbolic and, you have to imagine, deeply moving transfer of duty. And the respect people had for this association was obvious. The report mentions that the Board of Trade had entrusted them with $3,000, which was a ton of money back then, specifically to help WW2 veterans get back on their feet.
So this wasn't just some advocacy group, it was a real pillar of the community, trusted to do right by its people.
And all of this brings us right back to that huge unspoken question hanging over the entire conference. All these little battles for housing and education and dignity, they were all happening while the single biggest question of all was looming. What was going to happen to Newfoundland itself?
Now, the association was officially non-political, but President Donahue couldn't just ignore the elephant in the room. Just listen to how carefully he words this. He doesn't say Canada or independence, but every single person in that room knew exactly what important decisions he was talking about. It's a total masterclass in political understatement.
And then, bam, immediately after that supercharged political sentence, he quotes the patriotic song Ode to Newfoundland. The contrast is just stunning. In one breath, he's acknowledging a future that could literally erase their country from the map, and in the very next breath, he's affirming their deep, unwavering love for that exact same country. It's the central tension of 1947 Newfoundland, captured perfectly in 2 sentences.
So in the end, what are we looking at? This isn't just some dry report of committees and resolutions. It's a deeply human document. It's a snapshot of a community grappling with loss, fighting for their day-to-day survival, and staring into a profoundly uncertain future, all at the exact same time.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The report reminds us that for these veterans, the fight didn't end when the war did. They came home and immediately started a brand new fight for jobs, for education, for their families, and for the future of their home. It really makes you ask, what does it truly mean to honor that kind of service?